Good evening. It's Miss Dolores from Baldwin Borough Public Library. Welcome to our special edition of Baldwin Bedtime Books. Tonight we are going to do a special story time all about bees. We are going to meet a special local beekeeper. Her name is Miss Candace. She is very special to our library. She is a Baldwin resident and she was very instrumental in fundraising for our new library and is a big library advocate and especially loves Baldwin Borough Public Library. She is also a beekeeper and she was going out to check her bees a few weekends ago and offered to do some footage of what it's like behind the scenes of keeping bees. So interspersed with learning about bees tonight, we're going to meet Miss Candace, and we thank her and her husband, who was the videographer, for filming all the behind the scenes for the bees you're going to meet tonight. So before we get into that, we're going to do a little introduction of what honeybees look like, what honeybees' jobs are, and how they produce honey. There are many great books in our library and many libraries about bees, but this is one of my favorites. This is called Follow That Bee. So it's the story of, you can see a beekeeper, you can see that she has a bee suit on, you can see the hives right here, and we're gonna see the ones that Miss Candace uses and what she looks like when she goes to check on her bees very shortly. You can see children, and they're gonna get a tour and an explanation of what honeybees do. So we're going to use this book tonight, and first we're going to do a little intro so that you can meet who is in the story. This is called Meet the Bees. The 5 friends are buzzing with excitement today. They're visiting Martin's neighbor, Mr. Cardinal. He keeps beehives in his backyard, and he has invited everyone to see how honeybees live. So over here you can see there is Sally, Nick, Ollie, little dog, Pedro, Martin, there's the honeybee, Max, and Yuli. And they are going to learn, just like you are, about some honeybees. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to learn to identify a honeybee. So we're going to go way back here in our book and learn to identify a honeybee. So this is what a honeybee looks like, really, really super close up. Yuli notices that it isn't always easy to identify honeybees because other bugs, such as hornets, beetles, and moths, can look similar. Mr. Cardinal teaches the 5 friends how to spot a honeybee. Okay, so we're going to look up close at a honeybee and go over all the parts of a honeybee. Okay, so right here, you see these 2? Those are antennae, and they're used for the honeybee to smell and to taste. And then just like us, the honeybee has a head, and you can see one big eye here. There's one on the other side of his head. But did you know that honeybees actually have 5 eyes? They have 2 big ones, and they can detect the flowers and land on them. And also they have, doesn't show on here, but way up here, well, it's super close, maybe you can see right here, they have 3 tiny eyes, and those are used to detect light. Okay, so if you go down here, see this right here, it looks like a super thin straw. That's called the proboscis. It's like a straw-like tongue, and it's used for sucking liquids and food, and for the food exchange between honeybees. All right, and then here are their legs. You can see, just like yours, and see how they're bent, so they can land and take off and do all the things like you can do. All right, the legs for the honeybee help carry pollen to the nest. All right, and then the pollen, when they ingest it, goes into a pollen basket, and you can see that right here. And the pollen basket is where the pollen is stored. They also have a hind wing. I'm sorry, a hind wing right here and a forewing right here. So the bigger one is the forewing and then the smaller one is the hind wing. They have an abdomen, just like you do. They have a stomach. And right back here is a stinger. And did you know that only female bees can sting? And they use the stinger only when they feel threatened for a defense mechanism. So that is a little bit about different parts of the honeybee. And then we're going to see what types of honeybees there are. So over here, there is a worker, a queen bee, and a drone. So let's find out what each of those do. Oh, there's a little fun fact. A bee flaps its wings over 200 times a second. That's how a bee gets its buzz. So when you hear that sound of the bee, it's because they're flapping their wings super fast. All right, so over here, you can see the honeycomb, and you can see the queen bee, you can see the worker bee, and you can see the drone. So let's meet each of them. Back in Mr. Cardinal's yard, the friends watch the bees at work. In a hive, every bee has a job, and they work together. Not one bee could survive on its own. They have chores to do around the house, just like we do, says Pedro. So there is only one queen, and she's the biggest female in the colony. There are a few hundred drones in each hive, but there can be up to 80,000 worker bees. Wow, that's a lot, so let's meet them. Okay, so over here's the queen. There's the queen in the middle. The queen has only one thing to do. She lays eggs, and she can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day. Is that crazy? All right, then you have the worker bees. Worker bees are female, and they work the hardest. They collect pollen and nectar and make wax. They clean the hive, they feed the queen, they care for the young, and they produce honey. So they have a lot of jobs, those worker bees. And then here you see a drone. A drone is a male bee, and his job is to mate with the queen so that she can lay eggs. Okay, so the drone bee really only has one major job to do. The worker bees have many jobs, and the queen bee has only one job to do, but the biggest job, which is laying the eggs. Okay, so we have identified honeybees. We learned about the different types of honeybees, and now we're going to meet up with Miss Candace, and we're going to let her tell you a little bit about honeybees. But first, we're going to see if you can identify some objects that every beekeeper needs. So while you're watching the video, see if you can find these objects. A beehive, hive tools, a queen excluder. She's going to mention about a queen excluder and what it does. A bee suit, gloves, boots, a smoker, frames, and feeders. All right, let us meet Miss Candace.
Welcome to the apiary. We have 3 hives. 1, 2, 3. You'll see they're pretty tall right now. They have what we call the bottom boxes or the deeps. This is where the bees live and breed. So in this deep box and in this deep box, you're going to find eggs, baby bees, larvae. Here, you're going to find, this is a honey super. It's shallower. Those are going to be comb. They're going to be building the honey, and that we have a little, you see this brown thing here. It's called a queen excluder. That's so that the queen cannot go up into the honey supers and lay eggs. We want to have just honey up here so that we can harvest these 2 boxes later this summer.
Well, was that exciting seeing Miss Candace and seeing what the beehives actually look like? We're going to meet her again in a few minutes. She's going to show you some more equipment and things about the bees. But first, we're going to go back to our book, and this section is called Honeycomb Home. Look, shouts Martin, a beehive. Bees build their hives with wax that comes from their bellies. A female bee chews the wax, mixing it with her saliva or spit. When she's done, it's just the right texture for building a wax cell. Rows of these cells make up a honeycomb. Many honeycombs make up a hive. This 6-sided shape is called a hexagon. It is the best shape for a honeycomb cell because it wastes no space, and is super strong. Here's what it looks like inside the hive. Okay, we're going to go back to Miss Candace. We are going to meet her again. She's going to show you one of the pieces of equipment that was in our pictures, and it was a smoker. She's going to show you what the smoker does, and then you're going to see really up close and personal more about the bees.
Okay, right here we're preparing the smoker to use. Two tools. You have a hive tool. This tool's great for prying, poking. It can be a little sharp. Want to be careful with that. Secondly, we have, this has been something I've struggled with for years since I've been beekeeping. It's just getting, starting a good fire up in the smoker. And then once you close the lid, you want to be able to have a nice thick, but not hot, it's weird, right? Smoke coming out so that you can basically alarm the bees. You want to tell the bees, go eat as much honey as you can. Don't worry about me. I'm just peeking. So that's what we're doing. We're telling the bees, your hive is on fire. Please go fill your bellies with honey. You might have to move. It's an emergency. So that's what the smoker's all about. Thanks. Okay, right now we've taken off the 2 honey supers. They seem to be going pretty well this season. This is the queen excluder. I'm gonna go ahead and smoke, and you'll be able to watch the bees. They will climb down or fly away. But the smoke definitely, as anybody would, if you smelled this kind of smoke, you would probably want to move. And all we're gonna do now, kind of got the bees worried about something else instead of us. We're gonna go ahead and take off. We're gonna peel off because it gets kind of sticky. The queen excluder. Go ahead and continue to smoke. There's a male, larger. The males are larger. Okay, I'm looking down in here and I see a lot of brood comb, which is where the eggs are laid. So that is good news. Okay, come on down. Look into. These are the deeps. You're gonna see some of the bumps. Those are more of the brood comb. Then you're gonna see what looks like it's sealed with wax. That will be the sealed honey. That's what the bees will eat in the winter. But the funny part is, because we smoke them, if you look down, if you can see in here, all of the bees have their heads in the open comb that has honey. Right now they are sucking down as much honey as possible because they think, well, they might not be living here anymore. So they're trying to conserve resources.
How incredible were those videos? Wow, that was really up close. All right, we're going to continue with our story. This is called Wiggle Waggle. Bees get excited just like us. Sometimes they dance. When a bee comes back from foraging, she dances to tell the other bees where to find food. The round dance says there are flowers close by. The waggle dance says the flowers are far away and shows them which way to fly. The direction and length of each waggle tells the other bees exactly where they can find pollen and nectar. The more a bee waggles, the more food is available. Okay, you can see the direction of food. You can see this arrow right here. And this is the waggle dance that the bee is doing. And he says, I can do the waggle dance too. So maybe you can get up and dance like a bee. Go ahead. Do it right in your living room or wherever you're watching. Dance around like a bee. Good job. Hey, that stings. Ouch, shouts Nick. Bees sting to scare enemies away. A sting can be very painful for us, causing swelling, redness, and itchiness. But it's much worse for the bee. After a bee stings you, its barbed stinger is torn away from its belly and the bee dies. Luckily, Mr. Cardinal knows what to do to help Nick. He pulls out the stinger as quickly as possible, washes the sting with soap and water, and applies ice. He explains that everyone should be extremely careful around bees. Some people might be allergic to bee stings and not be aware of it. Okay, if we notice all in our videos that Miss Candace is wearing her bee suit so that she cannot get stung. Did you also notice her gloves and her boots? So her entire body is completely covered. All right, so taking the stinger out. Did you ever get stung by a bee? All right, for our last page, it's called It's Honey Time. Once a bee colony produces more honey than the bees need, the beekeeper can remove some. Beekeepers wear protective suits in case the bees sting them. Mr. Cardinal has another trick to protect himself. Smoke calms the bees, he says, as he takes the top off the hive. Okay, we saw that in the last video. We saw what the smoker does and how the bees just move away. Mr. Cardinal scrapes honey from the frame and puts it through a filter to remove the wax. Then the kids help him pour it into jars, ready for the market. All right, we're going to meet up one last time with Miss Candace. She's going to take us back to her hives, and let's see what she has to say.
Okay, so this is one of the this is in the bottom boxes where they would be having broods. So you notice the pattern, they were putting honey and food up here. This is normally where they would store their brood, their eggs, whatnot, and then you see these orange little combs. Those are actually pollen. They'll store pollen. So there's 3 things they can have inside of a honeycomb. That'd be honey, pollen, or bees, baby bees. So right here, then you see this big gloppy glue, it's dripping honey. That is bridge comb, where basically if you look at the box again, if these two frames are too far apart, the bees, they have what's called a bee space. If they're not comfortable with that, they will fill it in with honey and comb. They're very particular about their spaces.
A buzzy day at the market. Supporting local beekeepers, farmers, and gardeners is one of the best ways you can help bees. Is there a local market where you live? All right, so there they are. They're getting their honey. And now you know how the honey was produced. Well, I hope you have enjoyed our very special edition of Baldwin Bedtime Books. We want to again thank Miss Candace for her time and for showing us honeybees behind the scenes. And the books that I am recommending will be available at the end of the video so that you can see. The one that we read tonight was called Follow That Bee, a first book of bees in the city. It's written by Scott Ritchie and it's published by Kids Can Press. Other books that I really love, I really love this book. It was a little more detailed for a story time, but great for learning about bees. It's called The Bee Book by Charlotte Milner. There is a Curious George book called A Home for Honeybees. And there's a National Geographic bee book, and it is written by Laura Marsh. Those are all available at our library. They're at the end of the video. If you would like any of the books about bees or to learn more about bees, just give us a call at the library, 412-885-2255. We can get together books for you or anything, any topic that you would want. We hope you enjoyed our Baldwin Bedtime Books, and we'll see you next Thursday at 7 o'clock. Have a great week.